Okay, good evening. This is Redwood Wonk on Access Humboldt. My name is Eric Kirk. I'm with Chuck Rogers, and we're going to talk national politics. We're going to get right into it. One of the big stories of the week is the Republican Party and Trump world turning against big business. It's happened before, but as we know, a lot of the big companies that do a lot of business in Georgia are either under pressure or for principal positions or some combination thereof, wanting to pressure the Georgian government to repeal the law that Biden has called Jim Crow. Governor Kemp he's getting a squeeze on both sides because he's probably going to have to face Trumpers in the primary in a couple of years. And then if he manages to win that, he's going to be facing a strong general election challenge, possibly from Stacey Abrams or somebody else. And he's really upset. He's calling it the reference to their new law as Jim Crow, as cancel culture. They're pulling out all the stops on this. And of course, the National Baseball League has officially pulled the All-Star game out of Atlanta. Some people who are on the left aren't actually happy with that, saying that it's just going to hurt people in Atlanta. But, it's symbolic. And of course, Trump is saying this is going to destroy baseball. It's time to boycott the National League, just like he called for the boycott of the NBA because of what all of what they were doing with Black Lives Matter. So Anyway, so McConnell gets in front of a camera and starts talking about how big business should keep its nose out of politics, right? He's backed off that today. He went back and said, I was not artful in the way I communicated that. I'm just saying they should put more thought into what they do. Of course, big business is what keeps him in office, right? Keeps him in power. I mean, he certainly doesn't want them to not be involved in politics. He just doesn't want them taking the wrong stands. And absolutely, the companies do not want to be tagged like Woolworths was in the 60s of being the corporation of Jim Crow, right? And so it's a real tough political moment. And McConnell's in another tough bind. He finds himself in many of them. You're right. Earlier in 2013, he actually defended Citizens United by saying that corporations, are like other people, have the right to express politics. It's a huge contradiction. And so, anyways, the title of this segment, Trump World versus Big Business. You don't see this very often, but business does not want to be associated with Jim Crow. They absolutely do not. The Democrats have framed it brilliantly and in my opinion, accurately, because this law, whatever you want to tell you, we've dissected it already, is intended to disenfranchise black voters and also allow for crazy takeover situations. If somebody like Trump comes back and says, the election was stolen, and then it gives the Republican-led majority legislature power to override local elections departments and do God knows whatever, and that is absolutely draconian right then and there. They did back off some of the other things. They say they expanded the early voting time. It depends on what county you're in, because some counties had longer early voting times, particularly the urban areas. They're saying rural areas can't afford to do that, so it puts those voters at a disadvantage. So everybody's got the same thing. Anyways, Chuck, what do you think?
Well, you mentioned artful. I would say that Mitch McConnell is not artful about anything. He, if anything, he is blatantly hypocritical and he's cynical. And the fact that he is in opposition to voting rights is just un-American. I mean, it just is. That's who we are. One person, one vote. That's what we're all about. And he's in opposition to that, which is not a winning position to be in in this country the way we're currently constructed. So that's one thing. The other thing, I don't see this as really a partisan battle. I see this as just being opposed to democracy itself. How on earth can you go on the air like you did and be in opposition of voting rights and allowing more people to vote more easily? We should be for that. All people who buy into what this country is about should be for that. Yet they're in a position now, for a lot of reasons, a lot of demographic reasons and a lot of political reasons, where they're forced to be in opposition to it. So that's where they are. It's just simply wrong. The other thing I think it highlights is this, Eric, that the Republican Party right now is in a position where they're not really countering anything that the Biden administration is trying to do. They're not offering alternative ideas. They're just trying to stop people from voting. And if that's all you have to sell, that's a losing position to be in. Do you agree with that?
Well, I certainly do, and it's really hard for them to argue. They're arguing that, well, the Trump lawyers made these arguments that there was, possibly massive fraud, that there were irregularities that were happening, but they never really pointed to any. You had the suitcases. It was all a lie, and that's what this is based on. Now, of course, one of the things that the Democrats are really homing in on is the ban on food and water. And the Republicans are saying, it only applies to 150 feet away from that. So, maybe they've got a point there, but lines shouldn't even be longer than that. And Kemp made an interesting comment today. He said, well, anybody who's waiting in line can order pizza or Uber Eats or Grubhub, right? It's like, well, first of all, you're assuming that they've all got the money just to do that. And second of all, you're conceding that you've got lines that are structured in that are going to be so long that you've got time to order something like that, right? Yeah. And their argument is that they just want to do it 150 feet close to the polling place because they don't want people going up there and offering them pizza and trying to swing their votes that way. Now, how many people are going to change the way they plan to vote because you offer them a slice of pizza and a bottle of water?
Right. Yeah, I know. And you think about a state like Georgia that probably would have primaries in June, right? Maybe in June or July, when in that part of the country, it's going to be 95 degrees and 90% humidity. And you may have elderly people who you have stopped from voting by mail, standing in lines that are sometimes 8 to 12 hours long in that kind of heat and humidity. And you're not being able to offer them water, and you're expecting them to just order from Uber Eats. I mean, how far down the rabbit hole do you have to have gone as a party where that's what you're standing on?
Well, it's what you call tone deaf. I mean, the Uber Eats line, that's going to be, that was a dumb thing to say on top of it, because that's going to be comments for, late night comedians, and it's going to be used. I think Kemp is really going to have a hard time winning re-election. And, I think he's not going to earn back Trump. Trump doesn't like him anymore. So the Trumpers don't like him anymore. And if he barely gets by, somehow manages to get by, I just don't see how he wins in the general unless they can suppress the vote. They're hoping that this will suppress the vote, the one drop boxes. But companies don't want to be part of that. They don't want to be tagged with that anyways. I mean, like they have in the past. Coca-Cola does not want to become the Jim Crow soda.
No, you know what? Those companies and Major League Baseball, not just Coca-Cola, but Major League Baseball, they see the same numbers that you and I see. They know where the demographics are headed. They know what is right and wrong. And the last thing they want is to be left out and be associated with a party that is continuing to be less and less and less relevant by the day. They know that their future customers are not coming from Mitch McConnell's wing of society. Their future customers are coming from the opposite end. That's where most of the people are going to be going forward. They know that, and they're all about making money and having returns for their stockholders, and in the case of baseball, for their franchisees. They're not beholden to Mitch McConnell. It's a losing position he's taking.
All right, one more piece of news before we move to the next topic is I'm forgetting her name, but the representative in Georgia who got arrested and was being charged a felony for not pounding on the governor's door when it was being signed, African American woman. They were going to charge her with a felony with potential for 8 years in prison. The district attorney got a hold of it, looked at it, and said no way, and dropped it. So that's as of today. Okay, the big battle right now at the federal level is the infrastructure bill. Big debate over what is, in fact, infrastructure. If you take the Republican approach, infrastructure is basically roads, bridges, and oil pipes. Not water pipes, oil pipes. And Democrats, of course, see it in terms of daycare, in terms of moving towards green technologies, of course, Amtrak, public transit, and a much broader concept of what infrastructure is and what it has to do. It looks like it's going to be a straight Republican-Democratic vote. Key is getting all of the Democratic votes. And of course, it involves an increase to partially pay for it. Biden had proposed an increase in the corporate income tax from 21% to 28%. Manchin says he will not vote for 28%. He'll vote for 25%. I'm not quite sure how much money that generates and how much that compromises the situation. But that once again, we've got Manchin and Sienna in the way.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things on that. The way you framed that, I want to go back to that. You said roads, bridges, and oil pipelines. That's what the Republicans think of as infrastructure. What does that sound like to you? To me, it does not sound like the 21st century. To me, it sounds like the mid-20th century, not even the late 20th century. It sounds to me like the mid-20th century. And that, I think, encapsulates exactly what you said there, encapsulates where the Republican Party still is. They're, 75 years behind the times. Of course, modern infrastructure has to include things that have to do with modern life and keeping society functioning in the present, not in 1955, but in 2021. And that's their problem. They have no modern ideas to sell to people. They're still operating in the 1950s, and that highlights it. As far as the corporate income tax goes, to get this thing passed, I could see a compromise to get Joe Manchin's vote to go down to 25%. But in addition to that, part of the negotiations for that with Joe Manchin should be, and with others, should be that if we go to 25% instead of 28%, we have to get rid of the loopholes because a lot of those corporations pay 0% to start with. So we have to get rid of that so they actually do pay 25% so that this gets paid for. So, I hope that if the negotiations end up at 25, that at least the loopholes are then gone. I don't know how much hope to put for that, but let's hope.
I don't know. I know they are tweaking a lot of the deductions. For instance, Biden wants to replace the fossil fuel subsidies with incentives to convert to green technologies. And apparently they're developing a plan around that. So maybe there's other ways that they're going to tweak it where they can shut down not just loopholes, but eliminate some of the deductions. I mean, that's really, one of the things they can do. Like I said, it's, Manchin is willing to increase it. You're right. Is he going to get in the way of green technology because he's a coal state guy? I mean, we just don't know. And that is, he's going to be in the news a lot over while this is happening. And he's, I don't know, I think he's starting to feel a little bit of pressure because when he said that, he said, I'm not alone. I'm not the only Democrat who feels this way. Right. So, and of course there were 7 people who voted, with him in the last bill to not have increase in the minimum wage, federal minimum wage to $15. He's proposing $12. So we'll see. And we also don't have very many opportunities to actually pass the stuff by reconciliation. And some of the senators are saying we have to pass the voting rights bill. It has to be passed, and you cannot let the filibuster, which has a pro-slavery legacy, interfere with that. And I can see that's going to be a very big fight within the Democratic Party. Warnock has said that bill must pass.
Right. Yeah, and he's right. With regard to green energy, I'm hoping, and I don't know this for sure, but I am hoping that there are some political advisors somewhere in Washington and in the state of West Virginia that are trying to convince Joe Manchin that this is actually an opportunity for him. The fact that he has this vote that the Democrats have to have on virtually everything. If he could go into negotiations and try to sell the idea to both the Biden administration and to voters and companies in West Virginia that there could be some job opportunities and a lot of money coming into West Virginia if they could get on board with some of the green energy jobs that might land in West Virginia, maybe then he would feel safer to cast that vote. Because, for people in West Virginia who need to put food on the table, it seems to me that they would be excited to get jobs that paid well, that would be lasting into the future, that might keep their kids in the state, and less beholden to an old form of energy that laid off so many people and is a dying industry. And that's plain to everybody. Let's hope that somebody is making that point to him. But I don't know that they are, but let's hope that they are. As far as reconciliation goes, I read something earlier this week that the Senate parliamentarian might have a way that they can use reconciliation an extra time because it was not used last year. Now, I don't know how that's all going to shake out, but if it does, it might give them another opportunity to get something big done. But we'll see how that goes.
I don't know. There's some kind of mystery meeting that Chuck Schumer had with the parliamentarian that proposes that there might be some other way to get around the filibuster. I have no idea what the details are. I imagine we'll learn about it. But Chuck Schumer has been kind of walking with a big swagger lately, apparently. He's confident that he can get some of the stuff through.
Yeah, you noticed that in his public speeches recently. I picked up on that too. He's feeling pretty confident. I think that Nancy Pelosi is feeling confident as well. So, but you still need the deliverables, right? You still need to get it done, which means they've got to get the votes in the Senate. Yeah.
All right. Well, that takes us. Is there anything else that we want to talk about with regard to Manchin and Sienna? I mean, this is the problem that the Democrats are going to have. It's an internal problem that and it's not just those two. You've got about 4 or 5 other senators that you've got to worry about. What are the Democrats going to do about this?
Well, I think until the dam breaks on the Republican side, I don't think they have a choice except to do something about the filibuster, because I don't think they want to go through this with every single piece of legislation that they want to bring to the floor. I think they need to just go ahead and do something about the filibuster, whatever it is, whatever they think they can get done on the filibuster, whether it's getting rid of it or whether it's requiring people to actually go to the Senate floor and talk for 4 hours or 8 hours or whatever it's going to be. They need to do something about it, because otherwise they're going to have to go through this every single time with literally every piece of legislation. Because right now in Washington, it's really not about public policy on the right. It's only about wins and losses on the right. So they're going to have to do something about the filibuster. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, because I don't think they can expect help from the moderate Republicans because
No.
they voted for impeachment, and they may I feel that they've expended all their political capital on that. Some of them are going to be facing primary challenges.
Yep, that's right.
So.
I, Richard Billhouse Nixon, do solemnly swear.
I, Gerald R. Ford, do solemnly swear.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
I, George Herbert Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear. So help me God.
So, all right. That brings us to Dave Chipman. Is not a name I've heard before, but apparently it's going to become well known. There's going to be a fiery discussion about it because the reports are he's going to be nominated by the Biden administration to head up the alcohol and tobacco force. What is it? ATF, alcohol and tobacco. Why am I forgetting what
Alcohol,
the F is?
tobacco, and firearms.
Firearms, thank you. Of course, that's the most important one right now. ATF has had a bad name on the right going all the way back to the Waco incident where they really badly handled a very tough situation. And of course, it's in Ruby Ridge, where the people were shot as they were coming out of their cabin. Crazy people, but still people, and and so they've had a bad name for that, and of course their alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. They've got kind of an anti-libertarian name right then and there, right? It's they're controlling firearms in a culture that doesn't believe firearms should be controlled. So ATF has already got a rep with the right wing and some of the conservative culture in this country. Biden is naming Dave Chipman, who actually is a consultant, a major advisor for Gabrielle Gifford's Center for Gun Control, for her organization, and he could head up the ATF. So you're going to have a strong gun control advocate heading it up. It's not like he's an outsider. He actually served in the ATF, and nobody disputes the effectiveness of his term there. He broke up gun rings. I mean, he did a lot of really good stuff. So competency is not going to be the issue here. The Republicans are going to see him as an ideologue, and that's going to keep this debate going after the recent shootings. And of course, Biden has some executive actions, orders he's going to be releasing within the next few days pertaining to gun violence. And we don't know what that is yet. But
yeah, what do you think the chances of Chipman getting confirmed? I mean, what are there going? You've read more about this than I have. Are there going to be some Democrats in difficult states who can't even support him?
I don't know. I don't know how strong. First of all, the NRA right now is in a weak state, so I don't know how strong they're going to be in it. I don't know how strong feelings they have against this guy. You also have Gabrielle Giffords is a very popular figure, and he's with her organization. This is the first I've ever heard of the guy, right? So I just don't know. He's probably more well known by people who are involved in the gun issue. I just don't know how it's going to play, or what the chances are. Biden, of course, is nominating him, knowing all that, but maybe he sees this as an issue. Maybe they feel they can shame the Republicans, because they're not doing anything about, after every mass killing. I mean, and almost comically, Senator Cruz was like saying, "Yeah, we have this discussion every time. Why don't we just stop having these discussions?" Right? It's and so we've been in an impasse, as you and I both predicted. Not much is happening. Maybe we'll see what Biden's executive orders do. We'll see what happens with this particular nomination. I just don't know.
Well, you mentioned Ted Cruz, and maybe that's where we can find a place to analyze this. Maybe Joe Biden is appointing a guy like this intentionally to call the question nationally for once and for all on this and say, look, I'm nominating a person to head the ATF who does have some ideas about controlling guns and reducing gun violence in this society. Republicans, go ahead and take a stand against that. And you'll have to live with that stance for the next mass shooting and the one after that and the one after that. And, once again, it puts them in a ridiculous situation trying to defend the indefensible. So maybe that's Biden's plan. Maybe it's political. Maybe he wants to go ahead and make this a national referendum on gun violence by way of the ATF nomination. I don't know. Maybe that's the calculation. Force them to take a stand against a person who wants to reduce gun violence in the United States.
Yeah, I don't know. And it might have to do with the way he's introduced. Like I said, I think the only people who know who this guy is are the people who are involved in the gun fight over gun rights and gun regulation, intimately, because I don't think anybody else knows who he is.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And you're also correct about Gabby Giffords and her standing among people all over, not just in Arizona, but also still in Washington. I could imagine that she might be called as somebody who could vouch for this guy. And then, of course, her whole story comes out.
Right.
And that will be quite pertinent to the people in Congress, because let's not forget that the attempted assassination against her was while she was in office at a campaign event in Arizona. And that's going to resonate with everybody who holds office in Washington, as it should. So
and of course, her husband's in the Senate now.
Yes, absolutely.
That's going to be so. It may very well be that they're going for an all-out attack on this issue.
That's the way I read it. I can't think of another way to see it. Certainly, there could have been other people, the names of whom I don't know, but there could have been other people he could have nominated that would have had an easier time of it as far as getting support. So maybe that is it. Maybe he's just calling the question once and for all.
Yeah. We've got a situation with the National Archives wanting access to the 26,000 tweets that Trump did on his unofficial Twitter account. As we all know, his Twitter account has been permanently suspended. A lot of debates about whether or not that should be the case. Interesting enough, Senator Bernie Sanders was asked last week about cancel culture and as it applies here, and he actually says that he feels uncomfortable about the idea of a permanent Twitter ban on Trump, not because that he wants to hear what Trump has to say, but because of the precedent.
Yeah.
And with Twitter is apparently resisting giving over those tweets to the National Archives for whatever reason, but they're asserting that it's their property and that the government doesn't have any inherent right to it. Earlier in the week, the arch conservative, probably the second most conservative person on the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, expressed in an opinion as they were denying a case because it was moot in terms of banning people from those platforms, says you've got Twitter, Facebook, and whatever are basically huge platforms with monopolies of this kind. They control the content and the form of the debate right now. They are every bit as influential, if not more influential at this point, than broadcast or cable networks, and yet there's nothing controlling them, unlike that. Now, he's arguing that they should be treated kind of like public utilities, kind of like, even though they're private companies. And that's an unusual argument coming from a, small government conservative. probably over the fact that Parler lost its platform and the rest. But I think there are a lot of progressives who aren't sympathetic to Trump and his 26,000 tweets and his ability to be on the platform, but they are concerned about private companies and the individuals who run those companies of dictating and governing political discourse in this country, and that's going to be part of this debate. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it's always been my view, still is, and I can't imagine it never being my view, that the President of the United States is a public figure employed by the people of the United States, and the office of the presidency is so important that whatever the President of the United States does should be part of the public record. And that's an important phrase, public record. A public person like the president should realize that he or she at some point is a public figure. And it's important for the people of the United States to have a record of what the President of the United States has done and is doing. Right. So my view on this is whether he used his private Twitter account or the White House Twitter account, anything that has to do with his job as President of the United States should be part of the public record. So Twitter should give to the National Archives anything from that account that had to do with his job as president. Now, they could go through there, and if there are things that are obviously personal, then maybe they would have a case that because this was on his private account, this particular tweet or this group of tweets should not be in the National Archives. But anything on that account that has to do with his job as President of the United States should be part of the public record and should be in the National Archives. Now, obviously, anything on the White House account, of course, should be. But I would argue that if you run for president of the United States, you should know that you're going to be a public figure. And you should be smart enough to use the White House account instead of your private account. But if you're not that smart, know that anything on the private account that has to do with your job as president is public record.
I from the article I read on this, I'm not clear what Trump's position is on it, whether or not he wants them in the National Archives or not. It's simply that Twitter doesn't want to have a precedent of admitting or conceding that it's not their property, that they don't have control over the content on their platform. I don't know, and that is going to be a big issue here. And and I certainly don't want it to become like the FCC where they're passing, rules about what words can be used on it and the rest. I mean, the FCC still has the George Carlin's famous 7 words you can't say on television, other things like that, because, our kids are too fragile to be able to understand it, like they never hear it anyway. And so, I'm concerned about government control over it and establishing that regulation. But right now, the question is, a lot of people's accounts were canceled, and a lot of people understand that when they suspended Trump's account, it was because it was a volatile situation, and they didn't want him getting people riled and having more violence spread out after the 6th. But it seems like there ought to be a point where where Twitter, if they are going to be a public platform of that significance, should have to say, okay, the danger is over, therefore the censorship is no longer justified.
Well, don't you think this argues for at Twitter, just as an example, since that's the one we're talking about, but for these public platforms like Twitter to have policies regarding people who open accounts. If you are a public person in elected office, please know that even if you're using a private account for something that has to do with your public job, that if folks like the archives or even journalists come for it, then we will be beholden to them to give them access to the things that you tweeted that have to do with your public job that should be of public record. Maybe it's just simply a policy that doesn't exist yet, but that should, with regard to, their terms of service, for example.
Right, but there are other issues too in play here. For instance, when they shut down posts for inappropriate content, the QAnon posts, the other things, they are censoring. And then there are some people, and there's a local public figure, I'm not going to name him, but I have a lot of discussions with him on social media, who argues that fact checking and putting the fact check at the bottom of the post is censorship because it's devaluating the post. Now, I think that's crazy. I think that you've got an opinion above, and then you've got the fact checkers hired by whatever the medium is giving their opinion, and you make up your own mind, right? I don't see that as censorship. But it's but that is the attitude. Trump actually outright said fact checking is censorship. Bad way to frame it, but he's opposed to that. So then, should there be rules about how discourse is affected, or should Twitter or Facebook have absolute right to decide arbitrarily what is proper speech and what isn't, when so much of the political culture relies on those platforms for discussion?
Well, yeah, and this gets to the whole issue of misinformation and disinformation that, arguably helped Trump get into office in the first place.
Right.
And wouldn't we better off if we had some agreed upon reality so that we could discuss public policy that affects all of us? And I think that's one of the central issues of our time right now is misinformation and disinformation. And what I think has happened along those lines is that technology has far outpaced politics and public policy. And so politics and public policy now is way behind the game as technology continues every day to advance. Yet we still stay mired in this era of misinformation and disinformation. And it's just because politics cannot keep up with technology. But we have to do something about it, because if we don't, we're going to be stuck in this situation where we cannot have a national discourse about anything because we, first of all, don't even agree on the facts. Right. So I would hope that companies like Twitter would, again, see this as an opportunity and get on board with the fact that we're all in this together, or should be, and we need to do something about misinformation and the fact that their platform has been used and continues to be used to perpetuate it.
Yeah, well, anyway, that is an ongoing discussion, but now you have Clarence Thomas chiming in, and I strongly suggest everybody read what he has to say about it, because I agree with about 90% of what he said in his concurring opinion about it. It's he sounds like a lot of people on the left, or ACLU types, who are concerned about the powers of these mediums, and and of course it raises the question: who decides what's misinformation and what's disinformation, right? Yeah. You didn't want Trump deciding that when he was the head of government. So even if it's better, even if Biden would be better at that, his administration would be better at that, he's not going to be in office forever, right? So how much power do you want to put in? What is the balance? We're going to have to decide that. But Clarence Thomas, who doesn't say much, by the way, right. It really went on a rant about it, and I was like, okay, it's not often I say this, but he raised some good points.
Do you think that the fact that Clarence Thomas went public with this view gives us any indication about some of the discussions he's had with some of the other far-right Supreme Court justices, or not?
I haven't heard anybody else comment on it. I don't know. I imagine they probably don't disagree with him, or maybe they agree with him in a limited context as it applies to Trump and the right wing. I just don't know. But I was impressed with what he said, even if his agenda is different from mine.
Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause. the cause of democracy. We are going to raise issues that, historically have not been raised.
What about the nuclear option, doing away with the filibuster? I can tell you that would be the end of the Senate as it was originally devised.
All of this is possible for America. Who was standing in the way? Mitch McConnell.
Where an insurrection that sought to overturn an election, when that failed, the action moved into state capitals.
We're coming back over to California here. And as a preface to this, I want to say I got my first shot today, Pfizer shot, through my turn, which is a state-run program, which is coming into various communities. I got it done at the Arcata Community Center. When I arrived, I was really scared that I was going to be there all afternoon because you know where the community center is, and went all the way from the line went all the way from the front door all the way around the sidewalk to the playground. And I thought, oh man, okay. I started calling up my office and saying we're going to have to reschedule some things, right? But the line moved quickly. I mean, I was amazed at how quickly it did. Now, there's not much to do, right? They ask you your questions, your entrance questions. You go there, they give you your shot. They ask you the questions twice to make sure it's all true. You wait there for 15 minutes. They had a bunch of chairs there. You get up and you answer some questions on your way out. And I'm scheduled for my second dose on April 28th. I know, and it was efficient. It was well organized. Whatever they did, they put it together. I'm gonna turn it back to you because I know you got your first shot yesterday, a Moderna shot, and I'll let you describe your experience. But the rollout in California was a little bit slow, and I think that the recall people were hoping to capitalize on it. It's not slow now, and the governor came out, kind of confidently saying, we want to be completely reopened by June 15th. That's before Biden's July 4th. He wants us to be on our way to full economic power, with everything quote unquote back to normal except for masks and social distancing. And man, if today's state program, my turn, is any indication, it looks like things are rolling really well.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. Mine sounds a lot like yours. I got my first dose yesterday, and it was at a drive-through facility right next door to the St. Joseph Hospital campus. And it was run by teams of nurses who had everything so efficiently worked out. I was supposed to get my inoculation at 2:30. I got it at 2:31. And they even went so far as to ask me, how do you deal with injections? And I said, not well. In fact, I'm needle phobic.
Right.
And they laughed and they said, well, let me tell you about these newly engineered syringes and needles. And they went through the whole thing. And by the time she was finished, I said, well, okay, go ahead. Let's do it. And she did. It was fine. It was as these things usually are, much worse in my mind than what it actually ended up being. And they steered me right over to the holding area where you wait your 15 minutes. They had nurses over there talking to you through the car window every few minutes, seeing how you were. And I was out of there. And it went perfect. The line, as you said, just kept moving. It was so well run. And they deserve a standing ovation for what they're doing. And have been doing through this whole thing. But so mine was Moderna. I'll need a second one, in about 28 days or whatever it is. But yeah, I was very impressed, and they deserve a lot of credit for handling this the way they have.
Yeah. Now, we are still not absolutely certain, but it seems to be based on anecdotal that when you're given the vaccine, you're much less likely to spread it, to take it and carry it to somebody else. We won't know that for certain until this fall. That's when they expect to have all the data. But one of the things about these vaccines, and if I had the option to take the Johnson & Johnson, even though it's only 65% effective, I would have taken it because it's almost 100% effective of keeping you out of the hospital, right?
Yeah, right.
So I would have done it. And besides which, I mean, based on today, we are moving towards a point where if herd immunity applies to this virus, we will be there. So whatever it is he did to put together this program, My Turn, and whatever it is that's happening, the rollout is happening. I mean, I was impressed today. I mean, we were just in and out, and it does mean that, that he is able to say this, and I think he's saying it early, not just to be cocky, but to preempt the recall election, which will probably happen in the fall. But I don't think he would want to say it and have it not be accurate, because if it's not that way on June 15th, he's going to pay for it. But he also wants the businesses to prepare and be ready for it. For restaurants to be back at full capacity, where we can just go to a restaurant and, I mean, it seems like such a far distant luxury to be able to go in to a restaurant, order some, eggs and with a cup of coffee and just enjoy yourself. I mean, that we're all looking forward to that. That's, I mean, that is really good news. And it's just, I don't know, today, going through that experience, I felt really optimistic and seeing all the people that were vaccinated. I mean, there were like 40 to 50 people in front of me. Wow. And I was inside the building in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. And, the other thing about it is you were mentioning the recall and so on. Let's not forget that getting this done in a state the size of California, which is bigger than most countries, but getting this done in the state of California is no small feat. So the fact that these inoculation events day to day are running so efficiently, and I'm sure there are probably some somewhere that aren't, but the ones that I've heard about and the testimony that you and I are just giving right now means that it's working pretty well, even in a state this massive. So I say cheers to the people who are pulling this off. They're doing a great job.
All right, and that brings us to another question, because one of the things that's going to hang over for a while, even if the economy's back at full strength and all the business can have full capacity, is we're still going to have to wear masks. They're still going to ask that we social distance as much as possible. And they're still talking about wanting to bar people from sporting events and from big events, indoor events, unless you're vaccinated, which brings us to the concept of the vaccine passport. And which is now part of the culture war. And it's kind of interesting because there's like some Republican national group that's holding a conference somewhere in Oklahoma or some red state place, and in which they've announced that they want everybody to have their vaccination information in ahead of time, and that's generating a backlash. They were apparently not in touch with their own culture war thing, because they, first of all, you've got the anti-vax on the left and the anti-vax on the right, but it's considered an infringement of their rights to, just like we've seen all these YouTubes about people not wanting to wear masks because that's infringing on our liberty, right? And now they want us to have vaccine passports, and so that means we've got to have a vaccine, taking on the mark of the beast or whatever, to be able to do business, and it's part of a culture war thing. I have some concern too about it because the rollout everywhere hasn't been necessarily equitable, and people who are poor, communities of color, have not gotten the vaccination as quickly. I have to say, in California, actually, they've done a real good job of catching up. They went into the communities with these programs. But in other states, it's been pretty bad. Florida, it's real bad. So is our vaccine passports that allow you to get onto planes and allow you to get onto these things, is that a classist thing beyond just the culture war? Is it going to reinforce privilege? What do you think?
Well, personally, I don't mind carrying some proof that I've been vaccinated. I also can understand how people would feel more comfortable going back to big events, knowing that people who are sitting next to them or around them in a stadium or a theater or whatever it is have been vaccinated as well. So on the one hand, you can understand that. On the other hand, this also exposes, once again, some hypocrisy on the right, because let's recall that it's the far right that is championing and touting the idea that everybody has to carry a certain kind of identification just to vote.
Right.
Yet they're opposed to vaccine passports. Now, how do you reconcile those two things? And you don't. You just have to say, well, it's the hypocrisy that is incumbent upon the culture wars these days. So there's that. I don't mind carrying that at all. I understand the fact that in some of the states that have not done a good job of making the vaccines available in certain areas, that will be a problem, and that should not happen. But you're right, a lot of them are catching up. And in a public health emergency, we should be able to know who has and hasn't been vaccinated.
Yeah, I understand that too, and they're very selective about what they consider to be freedom. They say, "Oh, I shouldn't have to be forced to wear a mask when I go into an establishment." But did they ever object to the signs that say "No shirt, no shoes, no service"? Right? I mean, I have to wear pants, and they're not going to let me in, right? I mean, where is the freedom there? And they certainly don't object that I have to have a driver's license to drive. And as you said, that I need an ID to vote, but to show that I either tested negative or have been vaccinated. And of course, there are people who are saying, well, what about people who have medical reasons not to get vaccinated? Well, I'm sure it would set up a situation for them where if a doctor said they can't be vaccinated because of this, they would get the whatever they needed for that.
Right.
So
Exactly. That's like on a driver's license. If you have to wear glasses, it indicates on the driver's license, right? It talks about all these things. So, but again, it just points out the pretzel logic on the far right, given the culture wars, and they have to be okay with all of their hypocrisy, and sometimes I think they don't even realize it.
Predictions, and this is the time where we, Chuck and I, make our predictions about about politics. And Chuck, you got some for us?
I have one today, and this one is not going to be borne out anytime in the next day or week or month, but maybe soon. I've been following recently what Mike Pence has been doing, and I want to get this name right. He has recently formed the Advancing American Freedom Organization. And he's beginning now to come out of his shell following the January the 6th insurrection, where folks were trying to find him. He's now come out of his shell, and it looks to me like, based on what I've heard and what I've seen that he has written, that he is, in fact, at some point in the near future, going to be obviously running for president in 2024. And not only that, I think he's also going to be a surrogate for people who are running in 2022 in various elections, both local, state, and federal elections. So I think what this means is that he is in the process now of forming a formal political organization that is going to see him announced for president at some point.
All right, I have two, and basically I'm reprising two predictions I made before and expanding on them. One is I said that Matt Gaetz would be definitely out of Congress by the end of May, probably by the end of April. Mm-hmm. I'm revising that. I think he's going to be arrested before the end of April. I think there's a lot going on there. Apparently, he tried to get a blanket pardon from Trump. Trump denies that, by the way. He's backing him up. But anyway, I am predicting that because, man, it's not looking good for him. Secondly, I want to bring up, I did predict that there would be a recall attempt of Gavin Newsom and that it would fail. I am now predicting there will be a recall election and it will go down in flames. And I think that Gavin Newsom, I'm not all that sanguine about it. Gavin Newsom isn't my favorite Paul out there. But I do think that he is going to come back like a phoenix. Cuomo probably won't, but Governor Newsom, nobody's going to remember that dinner by the time if the economy is roaring and he's looking good. I actually think he's probably going to be president someday. But those are my predictions.
So do you think the recall would be defeated like 60 to 40, 70 to 30, 80 to 20?
There's enough Republicans out there. I think 60 to 40, but still.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, that takes us to the conclusion of the show this week. We will be back next week. We'll see if any of our predictions have come true. Of course, ours are longer than that this week. But until next time, keep thinking.